Hello and welcome to the EDHRECast, where we're all about Commander, data, and dad jokes. I'm Joey Schultz, and I'm joined by my pun-tastic co-hosts. Up first, he might build a $1,000 grand deck because it's part of his $1,000,000 grand plan. It's Matt Morgan.
So, Joey, scientists recently combined the DNA of a cheetah and a king crab, and it is safe to say things went sideways really fast.
Okay. That is a lot of scuttling that is happening. That's quite an image there, Matt. Not the pinchies. He's doing the pinchies. Pinchies. Up next, he heard that there's a card called Iroh Grand Lotus, but he's actually also in on Matt's deck idea, so he's going to make it Iroh Grand Lotus. It's Dana Roach.
The older I get, the more I find myself thinking about the hereafter. And like, to use an example, I was in the grocery store today and I found myself saying, like, what am I hereafter? And I just couldn't remember why I was even there in the first place.
This got so existential so fast.
It's all right, Dana. Alzheimer's will come for us all.
Absolutely, yes.
Matt, what is it that we're talking about in this week's episode, dude?
So this week, there's been a lot of discussion lately about hybrid mana, color identity when it comes to commander decks. So we wanted to zoom out and take a look at what are some just pillars of the format. What truly makes Commander as a format and why it's so unique. And we wanted to look at those rules and what would happen if those rules changed.
Yeah, more than just color identity, a whole bunch of them. What are the various load-bearing walls of the format, and how many changes could be made to them before this format starts to look like not Commander after all? You suggested this idea. I'm really interested in getting into it because, yeah, you're right. There's a lot on people's minds here about what it is that makes this format so distinct, so wonderful, so unique, and what makes it properly it. So exciting to get into. Where, I guess, should we start with this topic, do you think?
I mean, the kind of the most obvious one I would say is multiplayer, right? Like that's the defining difference, I would say, in Commander to some other format.
Yeah. Big pillar right
and
there.
This should be easy to answer, like, well, it would be a whole different game if it was multiplayer. But I do actually, in thinking about this, I do have one point I will make. Multiplayer adds in some decision-making stuff that doesn't exist elsewhere because you have to make decisions based on, like, how is everyone going to respond to me doing that in a way that you don't elsewhere. In other formats, the person's trying exclusively to kill you as quickly and efficiently as possible, and like you being annoying or you being a threat or something like that doesn't factor in. That doesn't change what they're doing in response to you. In Commander, there's a lot of times where, like, you might have a card in hand or something and you will not play that card because you're like, nope, I'm not the threat right now. That person's the threat. Let's let everyone deal with them and I will make my move, whatever that winds up being. That doesn't happen outside multiplayer. I think, like, losing that aspect of Commander by moving it to a Singleton format is very impactful.
Yeah, the politicking in Commander is what makes it so unique from 1v1. Like, it was such a massive shift from just how everybody was playing Magic for the longest time. I absolutely agree with you, Dana. Like, if this wasn't a multiplayer format, if it wasn't a 4-player pod, it would stop being Commander. Full stop. Like, we can just move on almost.
Yeah. We're here for the Battle Royale of it all.
Yeah.
And this was a nice reprieve from, like, a competitive place that was 1v1. And we do see that, like, when it did, like, the 1v1 French Commander has a completely different ban list.
Yeah.
Brawl is a completely different format. So this is, like, clearly such an integral thing. And I do appreciate, Dana, what you're saying, that it does invite some pro-social behaviors. It does allow us to have that more casual, relaxed attitude. It's a really important foundational pillar of the format that could not change lest it become something completely different. So really good first pillar there, but there are a couple of other load-bearing walls that are possibly a little bit more flexible or have been tinkered with a bit more as well. So what comes next?
Well, I think one rule that you just mentioned, they keep playing around with, in my mind, something that is really unique to Commander, that is kind of a staple and gives it a lot of the identity and literally the name Commander, is having a commander, having something in your command zone to build your deck around and kind of let everything flow from that. To me, that's another huge piece of how, what gives Commander its identity. And like I said, literally comes from the commander.
Yeah, this is one of the other, to me, definitely defining features of the thing. It's just like, you got a little guy there. You got a little dude in the zone who's going to help you. It feels like picking a character in a Battle Royale game. It feels like, oh, I have some identification with this character, and it becomes an outlet for creative expression. So that is something that they've tinkered with before. They've changed things like partner. You can have 2 of them. Or they recently made changes to allow vehicles and space stations to be your commander as well. So they actually have messed with this rule a little bit in the past before, or made things that do kind of play around in this area. So it is a load-bearing wall of the format, but it is one that has gotten different coats of paint over time, and that's kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the backgrounds really showed, because of the way backgrounds work, they basically modify what your commander does. Like that, they are kind of a modular suite of abilities that you can have in the zone that when it's in play adds something to your commander. What's interesting about that is, like, it's not just an enchantment in the command zone. That would change how the game plays.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's just it's a different, like, set of abilities that your commander would have. And while that on paper, there's an enchantment in the command zone, that looks like it's a big change, it doesn't play that way. I thought that was very interesting with the addition of backgrounds. It doesn't really alter how the game flow goes because it's just changing what your commander does.
Yeah.
Versus planeswalkers. Whereas a planeswalker in the zone, and there's only a couple that are legal, but like that does change things because now suddenly, like, it's changing what combat is happening and like what you're needing to do to remove that spell.
Well, and they've changed that, and that's a conversation, Danny, you mentioned of planeswalkers as commanders. That's something that it feels like it pops up like every 2 years or so in the community. Everybody will talk about it nonstop for a month of, I really want planeswalkers as commanders, not just the ones that are specified as able to be played as your commander, but I want every commander, every planeswalker, I should say, to be my commander. And that, to me, would be a massive fundamental change in my mind. Yeah. Not just because it's going against everything, but the ripple effect that would come from making that one decision point.
This is a wall that they've given new coats of paint, but they haven't kicked it down completely. And there are ways that changing this rule could go way too far indeed. A sorcery as a commander, an enchantment as a commander. And I do actually personally feel that planeswalkers as commanders also would be like, that's a change that's a little bit too far. Like the space stations thing, it doesn't feel like it's the hugest thing in the world, but like even hearing from Rosewater's show and from Gavin's videos that apparently Wizards did try to pitch the commander format panel on making planeswalkers into commanders, I did not like that. That feels to me like a conversation that was already settled like a decade ago. I am glad that Wizards apparently listened to the commander format panel's unanimous response of please don't do that. Yeah. But it did kind of strike me in a negative way that Wizards was apparently still trying to beat that dead horse. TLDR, a change like that feels like a push for marketing purposes, like dollar signs and bottom lines, rather than it being a thing that really is done to make the game healthy. Planeswalkers that are designed to be commanders are a very different monster to the planeswalkers that are not designed with that in mind. And generally, having a thing that you must protect from combat just creates a different relationship to game tempo that I don't think would end up being healthy en masse.
So Dana, if they did make this change and just flat out said like any planeswalker can be your commander, I know that it was going to have massive changes in my mind, but like what does that look like in your brain?
I feel like I have to alter my decks so I have multiple removal spells that can hit planeswalkers. Because it's like too easy to find yourself in a position where like, oh, this is a creature light deck, or I don't have any evasion because my creatures are mostly here for some other purpose or something. Like I can't deal with it. I can't get to that commander. So I would have to definitely like make alterations to my deck to put and not just one or two, but probably like, multiple ways to actually hit a planeswalker and eliminate it.
Yeah, I mean, not just ways to deal with planeswalkers, but also if you are playing that planeswalker deck, I can see so many cards that instantly need addressing, whether it's making them game changers. I don't think they need to be banned necessarily, because I really think with the bracket system in place, that's going to give a little bit of a buffer for the really degenerate play patterns. But you automatically have stuff like the Chain Veil probably becomes a game changer. Doubling Season, I think, very firmly becomes a game changer because it interacts so poorly with every planeswalker out there. So there's a lot of cards that kind of have this like cascading effect of, okay, if planeswalkers, what really becomes absolutely broken with planeswalkers in play? And there's a handful of cards I know instantly that I want to be, become game changers.
Yeah, there are currently 266 cards that are planeswalkers but are not currently commanders. That's a whole lot of new commanders to be added to the format all of a sudden were a change like that to be made. But I know that I don't personally enjoy the gameplay patterns that would emerge if Narset Part or Veils is suddenly there in the command zone. Even the way that having a single planeswalker in the command zone already can change our relationship to combat, and game length as well is honestly another thing that people bring up a lot. If there are 4 planeswalkers as commanders, that sounds like a long game to me.
Well, and even if you switch over all of your removal, like Dana mentioned, if you're not doing it, if you're still trying to play like a regular commander deck as we know it today, that planeswalker deck is probably going to be packing a ton of board wipes, and that just makes the game go so much longer. And that to me is like on the social aspect of just like experiencing the game. That's the biggest negative in my mind is people going to play. I'd build the Bant Tameo from Shadows over Innistrad, and I just play a bunch of board wipes and just make it miserable for everybody else. Like that's what I see being the worst case scenario out there.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm very glad that the Commander format panel was like, let's not do this, please.
100%.
I feel the same way. This is a rule, having a thing to express yourself in the command zone, so core to the gameplay. But there are ways that a certain amount of restriction on that does make the game, it reinforces cool play patterns. And some of the changes that they made have been like, all right, cool, that leans into that really cool. But there are ways where it could go too far. And frankly, we've even seen things go too far before. Companions are in some ways a standard formats version of a commander in the format. And honestly, that wasn't good for those formats, So there are ways that you can play with this that are a little bit too much. So I'm happy to have this rule as it is. And in fact, a lot of games seem to be happy with this rule as it is. There are other games that lean into this expressiveness of choosing your champion. Riftbound is doing it. D&D is classically built upon finding a person that you identify with and expressing there. So I love what this brings to the format. It feels like such a core pillar to it for sure.
Well, before we move any further here, we have a few shout outs to do, starting with Dragon Shield, the only maker of Magic products to send their sleeves into the cold, empty vacuum of space. And if their sleeves will keep a card safe in those conditions, they will surely survive being left in my car overnight on a cool Wisconsin evening like I just did earlier this week.
Well, and one of the things that I love the most about Dragon Shield is not only did they send that Pokemon card to space, but then they auctioned it off as a fundraiser. Yeah. It was so nice to see. It was really, really cool to do. We're just super happy to work with Dragon Shield because they're just doing so many cool things.
Yeah, they have the Ravnica Guild sleeves coming out here in 2026 too. And I have a bunch of friends that, want to specifically sleeve up their favorite Ravnica commander or the favorite guild with those sleeves. So the licensed product is really nice coming from them. And we already had a few things coming out, some more in the future. So yeah, they're doing fantastic work.
I will need 4 packs of those Golgari Swarm sleeves, please. Yes. I also want a quick shout out EDHREC Games. If you go to EDHREC Games, there's actually crosswords that are coming out every Friday now as well. You can make an account to save your stats, your times, your streak data, and there are going to be even more cool features for EDHREC accounts in the future. But for now, if you want to enjoy Magic in a slightly different way, maybe a brain teasery type of way, we've got games like Spellify on there and a new crossword puzzle game. So check out EDHREC Games as well.
And if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so in a lot of different ways, whether it's just subscribing on YouTube, liking these videos. That's just such a huge thing. I know I've been saying it a lot lately, but YouTube's algorithm is really weird. So just every little bit helps. And truly, that is such an easy way to support us that we just appreciate so much. But if you'd like to head to patreon.com/EDHRECast, it's a way for us to give you a little something back as a way of saying thank you for supporting us on Patreon, whether it's seeing all the challenges stats we've done over the course of however many years the show's been going on. There's all that and more over at patreon.com/EDHRECast, including being able to be put in the running for the weekly patron shout out of the week. And so this week we absolutely keeled over when we saw that Jeff Keel went to patreon.com/EDHRECast to support us over there. So Jeff, thank you so much for all of your support. And we really do mean it when we say we couldn't do this show without the support of all of our patrons. We're kind of like PBS. We need all of our patrons out there to keep us going.
Terrific. Yeah. Jeff Keel, thank you so much. All right, guys, getting back into our topic here, talking about the things that make Commander. We went over, the fact that it's multiplayer, or the fact that there is a commander. Probably seemed pretty obvious, some stuff that is pretty, difficult to mess with too much without completely radically turning this into a brand new format. Another thing that we also got to throw out there is the fact that it's Singleton. The Singleton rule for commander feels so natural to us now, but that is a very novel way to engage with the game compared to a lot of the other formats that have that 4 of copy rule or unlimited drafting, any number of the things that you play. You can play all of those things as long as you got them. The Singleton rule also feels so core to the game that if you change it, I'd be like, my interest just went down, Yeah,
well, if you want to talk about things that would kill creativity, making a change to the Singleton aspect of the format wouldn't just hurt the creativity. It would kill creativity, in a way that I know that EDHREC has that echo chamber effect a little bit on, we show people what they're playing, which people take as endorsement, and it kind of furthers how cards kind of grow in popularity. This would kill creativity in a way that EDHREC hasn't even scratched the surface on, though. Like this absolutely, you're playing the best things. I'm assuming that they would change the rule to be you can play a 4 of. Why would you want to play against 4 Teferi's Protections and 4 Smothering Tithes all going on at the same time? Like that sounds miserable.
4 Ristic Studies in every blue bracket 4 and bracket 5 deck. Like legitimately, that's what would happen. And like that sounds just like a nightmare.
Even 2 would be too much. Yeah, any change that isn't like, I like the Singleton rule. Like the Singleton rule is perfect. It forces you to get clever. It encourages you to search for those lesser known cards, which is another huge hook into the appeal of the game to a lot of players. So yeah, also a very core foundational aspect. And it doesn't seem like there's even that many ways to change this that could be interesting. So it's not a rule that isn't in any danger of changing, but still an important foundational pillar to point out nonetheless.
Well, Joey, do you want a rule that is in danger of changing? And it sounds like it's picking up popularity is the how Commander dictates your card pool and what you get to play in your decks.
Yeah, so this connects to the color ID sort of thing that a lot of people are talking about. Obviously, the hybrid mana debate has been on the tip of a lot of people's tongues over the past month or so, and this, of course, is incorporated in this part. The fact that your commander does put a restriction on what can be in your deck is also a very foundational thing to Commander, because in every other format, you can play anything. You could play 20 islands and 40 red cards if you wanted to. Probably shouldn't, but you could. The cards are designed to be able to go anywhere in every other format. So the restriction here is another unique facet of the game. And this is something that has been played with a little bit over time and might be played with again in the future, because Wizards had made announcements pretty clearly indicating that they want to make changes to it in this way. So there are a couple of different ways that they could do it, not just with hybrid mana, but how do we feel about this restriction and how flexible it is or is not?
So the changes that we've seen them float, mainly the hybrid mana change, I would guess probably don't impact very much long term. Like if they were to announce that change tomorrow, 6 months from now, if I look back, I'm going to say like, oh, it didn't really impact my games that much. It's not that big of a deal. I think that's how it plays out. All of that said, the fact that like 90% of the people that I see like in favor of this are like offering up examples of, oh, cool, I can put risks. They're redeemed in my Lathril deck. I'm like, that's not cool. Nothing about that sounds cool to me. Like, I understand why it's good, but like almost all of the examples I see cited of things people want to do don't sound like they make for a better game experience. Like they're almost exclusively a few like corner case things that are very, very powerful. And that doesn't seem like the kind of change worth doing just to enable that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to hybrid mana, I really don't like the change at all. Because in my mind, the thing that echoes all the time is Mark Rosewater said, well, restrictions breed creativity. And that means you get to play within the constraints of, you make a decision, you play within like those constraints that like you are agreeing to. I really just don't like this change at all. And so I'm glad. I know our friend Brian Kibler, he put out a really good video. Joey, you did a really good video.
Thank you.
Kind of explaining more than like I can hear, but I really don't like the idea that hybrid mana should be changed. And the arguments for it, I understand they want to feature a mechanic they're going to bring back when we go back to Lorwyn here in a couple months, but I don't think that's a good enough argument of, well, shareholders, we want more people to care about all these cards versus what is actually good for the health of the game.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the words on the video. We'll link that video in the description below, along with Kibler's fantastic analysis too. Something I said in that video already, but which I'll echo here to ping off of your point there, Matt, is that, yeah, the way that Wizards made this announcement did come off as very biased to a lot of people, where Wizards was asking for feedback while also saying how they think you should feel. Like, even people who are for this change were like, hey, come on, this language is very leading and not really an objective way to ask for feedback. But, you know, to your point, Matt, about possible motivations behind this change being the ability to enhance sales for future products, Gavin did later say that they are not trying for this change just because of more upcoming hybrid cards in future sets, But I can't blame people for feeling dubious.
Yeah.
Because of the timing or because of the fact that Wizards made several statements in their announcement purporting that this change would be for the players, but then it was revealed weeks later that actually probably a bigger priority for them right now is actually how this change would impact them in design, especially when it comes to them designing like Universes Beyond cards and stuff like that. Like, I can't blame people for feeling the players and the health of the format are not the sole focus of the motivations behind this change after all. I can't blame people for feeling like Wizards has already made up their mind, for feeling like even if Wizards got like 60% of folks saying no, please don't, that it feels like they would still go for it anyway. It really has all sort of come off that way, which is why a lot of the language around this topic has been so charged. To kind of zoom away from that though, I agree with Tomer's take. I'm really here for changes that I think enhance things for players, but I don't think that has been demonstrated to be the case here. I liked Kibler's take that, truth be told, changing this rule in this way doesn't open up any new design space. There are no new card designs that you can make that you could not have designed before. This just changes where those cards can go. I liked Ristic Studies' take too. Thank you for the kind words, Sam. And I realize now I've been monologuing. The way that Wizards announced everything is something that I found a little bit disappointing, but in terms of the actual possible change here, it's not the kind of thing I can get super worked up about. It's not like an existential threat of a change or anything like that, but softening the restriction by small degrees when tight restrictions were always kind of the point of Commander. I guess I just ultimately feel like we don't need the format to look like everything else. I think it got to where it was by being different, So,
Dana, you like to make the analogy all the time, like having the green monster in Boston makes Boston's baseball field very unique. And I really think that this is one of those things that's kind of like baseball's different fields argument where, everything gets to play a little bit differently, and just blurring the lines to me means that everything is a little less unique as well.
Yeah, the old kind of keep Boston weird thing. I keep Commander kind of weird. I like that. I understand color identity is kind of dumb sometimes, whether it's stuff like extort being, an ability that can use black or white mana, can go on either card. You have weird situations like firebending right now. Firebending on a black card, it makes...
Or extort.
Right. Firebending is going to, on a black card, the card remains black. But if it wasn't a keyword ability, if it just said on attack, make a red mana, it would be a 2-color card. Like, I get why that's confusing to people, but I like that it's weird. I like that there's weird things in Commander. I think like that, it gives the format character.
I don't like the doors that it opens. I don't buy the slippery slope that some people have gotten into with this. Actually, if you want to get into like more of like what cards are going to suddenly see a whole bunch of play, our friend Anna Margaret actually did a really, really good video. I helped her out with some of the data over at EDHREC.
It's so terrific.
Yeah, check out her video. We'll have it linked here in the description too, but it's so good about just breaking down what would actually change, what cards suddenly just have this huge opportunity to get played in a bunch.
She goes over some of the numbers there about how there are like 426 total hybrid cards, not including the 2-brid cards that exist out there, and seeing like where they could indeed see play. And one of the things that she goes into there, which I think is especially great, an argument that's been put forward about potentially making this change is that it would help out monocolor decks. And she goes into the data of showing, well, actually, the colors that benefit the most are 2- and 3-color decks because they gain access to significantly more cards than monocolor decks end up doing. So it's a way of like stress testing the arguments for and against. And she does a brilliant job on that. Yeah. Highly recommend that video for sure. We'll have that linked as well.
It loses so much of the spirit of Commander if we start fiddling with the color identity rules, because to me, this is a much bigger pillar than a lot of the other things we've already talked about.
The thing I keep coming back to is that point of restrictions breed creativity. Like, that has been a cornerstone of Wizards' design principles for decades. But then they want to remove a restriction. I'm like, okay, but why? Why really?
Yeah.
And that goes back to whether this is a player and game health thing or if it's motivated by more of a designer thing and all that stuff mentioned before. A weird metaphor that I think I've used before on the subject is that like it feels like this format is kind of on a Kinsey scale where it's currently like a Kinsey 1 and it's weird to me to try and budget up into being like a Kinsey 3 when I don't know, I don't think this format is a Kinsey 3. I think it is actually trying to be a 0 because it wishes that it could eliminate some of the weird stuff around like off-color fetches or Borg-Tuma Yawgmoth going into any deck, or the weird look of Dimir cards with firebending, like you just mentioned, Dana, and all of that stuff. So
right,
because like I'm a Kinsey 6. Don't try and tell me that I'm a 3. It doesn't feel right, you know. I just don't think that this load-bearing wall of the format needs to be painted to look exactly the same way as all of the other formats do. Because I think the current wallpaper that it has is very pretty, actually. and well, like a kid here, like that's a silly metaphor, perhaps, but I'm only kind of kidding because I do actually think that a lot of folks are discounting the importance of the aesthetics. I really do think think the format gained a lot from your commander affecting the visuals. Like just being able to fan through a mono green deck and it's all actually green rather than being full of things like Leyland of the Guild Pact or the Tarkir Triple Color 2 Brids and stuff like that. Like that feeling is pleasing.
Sure.
And that feeling being pleasing helps the medicine go down, you know? Like if we're talking about the real consequences of what would happen with a change, visual muddiness is a consequence worth acknowledging. I think of this a little bit like the corseting and rhinestoning on a dress, or like the tailoring of a suit. Like, you know, when a suit is a rental versus when a suit is tailored, you can tell the difference. Well, one of them is a little bit more of an elevated presentation. And I think Commander flourishes by being a little elevated. We don't just want a functional format. We want a fabulous one. We want one that's striking, one that's handsome, you know? The whole thing is built on things that just are aesthetic choices. 100 cards is an aesthetic choice. Having a guy in the zone, that's also about the aesthetic. So yeah, I place a good chunk of importance on the visual impact that comes from potential changes like these, because restrictions don't just breed creativity, they also breed identity.
Like I said at the beginning of this little segment, I honestly don't think it would create that many negative play experiences versus like Planeswalkers as commanders. I feel like makes the game actively worse in a whole bunch of ways. I don't think this does. So like I have a tough time getting too wound up about it, but I just don't like it. Right? Like I just don't like it. I just for all the reasons we've talked about. And I don't think it adds anything positive, and it adds a bunch of little things that are negative. And, you know, I can't be passionate about a bunch of little things that aren't necessarily, you know, that are minor negatives, but, you know, I don't feel it makes anything better.
Now, we focused primarily on like this hybrid mana rules change as one of the proposed changes, but to zoom out a little bit more on that foundational pillar of, the commander that you choose does dictate your card pool. This is something that obviously we don't want to be like too loose. There are ways that a rules change in this type of area would be definitely way too much, like doing away with color identity completely and allowing, I don't know, Fierce Guardianship into every single deck, for instance. Sure. I think it's easy to see why we don't want it to just be far too open.
Put Smothering Tide or whatever in any deck. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's madness. No, that one was madness.
Yeah.
For sure. That's something to definitely weigh when it comes to the strength of this rule. It actually is, I think, doing a whole lot of work in ways that we probably end up taking for granted a lot nowadays. But the color identity restriction in general, even if it is by degrees potentially a little bit flexible, in general, it is something that has quite a lot of value, and I want to bring attention to that more on the macro sense, the zooming out sense. It isn't just about hybrid mana this or that. There are ways that this rule can be toughened or softened, but in general, wow, does it do a whole lot of work in creating fun restrictions for people to brew around and making the brewing experience interesting, and also making the play experience interesting too.
Yeah, the brewing experience of just finding something and like accepting. Like, it's almost like an agreement you make with your deck. Like, I'm accepting to follow these rules.
Yeah.
That's such a cool and unique aspect to Commander that 60-card formats don't follow. If you want to put a splash of something in there, you can do that. But it's finding something and just, making that covenant almost. And that's like such a strong word to use here. But, like, making that agreement with your deck, I really, really like that. Just as part of the brewing experience, like, I agree to follow these set pools of cards, and it's unique. It's so unique, and I would hate to give that up.
Yeah, I think it is interesting to look at like other games on the scene now as well. I think I mentioned Riftbound before, and Riftbound is actually using exactly the same color identity rules for its game now that it's getting off the ground as well. It has the same thing for their champions. Each one lets you use exactly 2 out of 6 possible colors in the game. The fact that Magic has the 5 colors is what makes it like so good. There is a slight separation there of what things can be accessed and how. And so I enjoy the strict restrictions of those, and having that echoed in Commander as your commander is like, no, only stuff that matches me and my predilections. There's something even flavorful about that too. And so it isn't just to me that restrictions will breed creativity during deck building, but they also inform some identity as well. They inform expression in that way too. So I just wanted to like sort of cap that off with like more of the zoomed out thing, like, oh, this is really something that maybe we take for granted, but Danny, you're right, it greases so many wheels, and it does actually help us feel more connected to those things in small, sometimes ways that we might take for granted, but we really shouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got a couple more rules we want to talk about here in the rest of the episode, but we got to take a real quick break. We got to get into some challenge stats because, as we say, there's a lot of data out there on EDHREC, and we don't always necessarily agree with it. So let's take a quick break. Let's challenge some stats, and we'll get right back into it.
Comic-Con isn't just a con, it's also a cruise. Comic-Con the Cruise is the ultimate vacation for fans of comics, gaming, and popular arts. It's 5 days of non-stop fandom fun, panels, and theme parties while sailing the Caribbean. An unforgettable journey where the world of popular arts comes to life like never before. Hosted by Felicia Day and starring an amazing lineup of celebrities like Billy Boyd, Alex Kingston, and Doug Jones, this luxury cruise sails round trip from Tampa, Florida to Nassau, Bahamas on Celebrity Constellation on January 30th through February 3rd, 2026. There are exclusive panels, workshops, daily tabletop gaming, and late-night chats. This is the heart of Comic-Con, but more personal. No convention floor chaos, just an immersive community and awesome experiences that you won't find on land. Learn more and see the full 2026 lineup, including host Felicia Day and a star-studded roster of fantasy, sci-fi, and more at comicconthecruise.com/EDHREC. Book a new reservation with promo code EDHREC to get $250 off your cabin. Once more with feeling, that's comicconthecruise.com/EDHREC and promo code EDHREC to get $250 off your cabin. Comic-Con the Cruise, the ultimate fan adventure. Guess what? Our favorite deck builder, Architect, just released a really cool new feature, uploading custom cards. A lot of folks like to homebrew or invent cards for house rules or just test out their own game designs, and Architect now has a place where you can customize your own card, name, cost, types, text box, and put it right into your deck, where it will be treated just like any other card would. You can make a card that is totally blank or upload your very own custom image of your custom card. And yes, when you make your designs, not only will they count towards all of your deck's stats, such as tracking things like your mana curve, your pips, your types, to make sure that all of the stats of your deck are accurate, to make sure you're getting the very best deck information, but also all the designs that you invent or upload are usable in the Architect playtester, which is of course the very best playtester in the biz. What's really exciting is that this new feature has also laid the groundwork for Architect to support uploading alters of cards too, so if you want to upload your own custom images of pre-existing cards, the fine folks at Architect have even more stuff cooking, so let them know if that's something that you'd like to see in the future. Check out our deck lists at architect.com/EDHRECast to keep up with all of our brews and try making your own custom cards while you're at it. That's archidekt.com/EDHRECast.
I have a challenge this week from a listener, JJ Mickey, and it is an overplayed challenge for the 435 Obeka Splitter of Seconds decks running Mystic Remora. So the way Obeka works is you have extra upkeeps, and that means extra cumulative upkeep triggers, which will stack up twice as fast, if not 3 times as fast, depending on like what extra upkeep stuff you are doing with Obeka. Makes the fish's lifespan particularly limited, even more so than it usually is. And maybe that's okay. Like maybe you'll be able to drop it on turn 1 or 2 or something before Obeka comes out. But if Obeka's out, it's probably not worth casting a card that's going to draw you maybe 1 or 2 cards before it goes away entirely. I mean, maybe it is, but you can probably come up with better ways to do that than a Mystic Remora that's going to run into a cumulative upkeep that you can't pay almost immediately. So yeah, I think that's a good call. It's an easy thing to like not think about because everyone's used to like, I'll have a few turns with Mystic Remora before it winds up being a problem. It's going to be a problem really quickly in that deck, and there's probably better options for you to draw extra cards in Obeka.
I'll move to my challenge here. I've got an overplayed challenge this week for everybody's favorite character from Avatar, Uncle Iroh. Specifically, Iroh Grand Lotus, the Teamer Iroh. And he's also the 5th most popular commander from the Avatar set so far, which is really cool. Iroh is a 6-mana creature that gives the spells in your graveyard flashback. And not only that, but also all of the lesson cards in your graveyard will be flashbacked for just 1 mana, which is real cool, especially because with a cost reducer in play, reducing your spells that cost 1 mana to 0 mana, Iroh can just land on the field and take your entire graveyard full of lessons and immediately cast them all like you're playing a huge Mizzix Mastery blowout turn type of deal. This is wildly powerful if you time it right. There are so many amazing cards that you're going to want to play for this deck, especially stuff that turns your spell casts into damage so that your final turn really is a truly lethal blowout on all of your opponents, not just you getting a bunch of value all at once. But to make room for cards like that, you gotta cut stuff. And the card that I would challenge for Iroh is perhaps being maybe overplayed is Master Paku, showing up in nearly 40% of these Iroh decks right now. Paku is a 2-mana 1/3 with prowess who, when tapped, mills a player for each lesson in your graveyard. I think this sounds neat for the deck, not because you'd be milling someone else, but rather because you can mill yourself to fill your own graveyard with more lessons. But to be honest, I don't like that he's only going to get the ball rolling once there are already lessons in your graveyard. I would prefer to instead play some blue cards that mill you more naturally and consistently, that get the ball rolling, stuff stuff like Hedron Crab, Stillness in Motion, all of those, especially since those don't have to like tap to trigger their effects, whereas Paku does need to tap to do his thing, which in this deck without a lot of tap outlets mostly means that you'd have to put him at risk during combat. And even beyond that, I think looting cards would probably be stronger because you'll fill up the yard with a bunch of lessons while also finding more cards that you need to help build out to your big final turn. Anyway, Master Paku, probably not the master that we need in this deck to help get the ball rolling, so if you're trying to build an arrow deck and you're short on space, Paku might end up being your cut. That is my challenge for the week.
Well, I'll wrap us up then and go into my challenge. So I got another Avatar card for you. Well, it's a card that should go in Avatar decks and multiple decks, actually, because it looks like Inkmoth Nexus needs to make a comeback, especially when you look at all of this earthbending stuff that's going around. And the one that I especially like is Boomy Unleashed. So Boomy Unleashed is a new Avatar commander. It is 3, a red and a green for a 5/4 trample, human noble ally. When it enters, you earthbend 4, which is put 4 +1/+1 counters onto a land and make it a 0/0 creature. Boomy also says that whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you untap all lands you control, and after this phase, there's an additional combat phase, but only land creatures, and it can attack during that combat phase. So the reason I like Inkmoth Nexus, and I know that the synergy has existed for a long time in Commander, but this is a nice reminder for a lot of people who just might be coming into the game with Avatar. So when you activate Inkmoth Nexus, you pay that 1 mana. You can do that even after it has become a 0/0 land with those 4 +1/+1 counters on it from Boomy Earthbending onto Inkmoth Nexus, which means it becomes a base 1/1 instead of a base 0/0, still has the +1/+1 counters, but it also gets flying and infect until end of turn. So if you happen to swing with Boomy and Inkmoth Nexus, you can kind of one-shot some players out there. So if you want to be truly mean and truly vile to your friends, this is a great way to overrun people. I mean, infect, vile, it's sticky, it's gross, it's sickly, whatever you want to say. But Inkmoth Nexus, it's only getting played in like 20% of Boomy decks. And if you look at some other earthbending legendary creatures out there in the set, it's being played in less than 10% in a lot of those decks. And if you want a nice way to make sure games end, because you know what they say, folks, games got to end. So there's a lot of nice fun synergies with animating your lands that I really, really like for any earthbending deck out there.
I got to share Secret Tunnel with Matt earlier before we recorded.
The card is so stupid.
Just unblockable.
Why is a land unblockable? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Watch the show. You'll love it. I promise. Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
There are a lot of really fun lands to earthbend out there. Indestructible ones, unblockable ones, and indeed infecty ones. So yeah, good catch. This is a pretty gnarly synergy.
Well, Challenge of Stats has been brought to you by Cardsphere, the best way to turn your unplayed cards into played cards. I wound up putting Amphibian Downpour into a bunch of my decks recently, so if you're the person that sent me 8 copies of it, thank you very much. And I think Matt has already gotten some Avatar cards in the mail just from pre-release weekend. Like when this show is being recorded, it's not even released yet, and Matt's already gotten some cards in the mail.
It's kind of wild. We're recording this Thursday after pre-release, and people have already been able to send me cards on Cardsphere. Just such a fast way, truly the fastest way to get cards if you're trying to get these things out there from the new sets.
All you have to do is send out cards that you aren't using, like Matt and Joey and I do, and use the credit that you get for those cards to get the cards you do want. Just go to cardsphere.com/EDHRECast today to get started.
All right, guys, getting back into our topic here, there are even more rules that are super, super important to what makes Commander Commander. And here's another one that I feel is also really untouchable. Like in terms of priority, this is probably one of those things that I could have potentially put this like way higher on my own personal list. That's the non-rotating card pool. The eternal format of it all. Our stuff is not moving around the way that Standard does. There is not a limit on how long you can play your cards. The fact that you can just always grab something that you used to have and slap it into a deck, that's huge. If Commander was not an eternal format, I truly don't think I would play it. Like, do you guys feel that way?
I don't think I wouldn't stop playing it. I do like the eternal nature of it, but I also really enjoy pre-DH, which is playing cards up to only a certain point. I know that there's certain cutoffs that other people like to play. I've met a play group that they wanted to play only with cards before Modern Horizons, and I understand that timeline 1000%. So I like it. But I also agree like that should be a sub format at the same time though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I think it's no secret that my favorite part of Commander is like finding some random uncommon from Odyssey that is really good in this one specific deck. Like that's right. One of the things I love doing is finding those like weird old obscure cards that in this one real particular niche situation are fantastic. And a format that rotates those out, I would lose a lot of the sense of exploration and of creativity that has drawn me to this format.
Yeah.
So I mean, would I quit playing? I don't know, but it would definitely remove a lot of the things that I find to be captivating about EDH.
Yeah, captivating is a great word for it. I think to clarify my own thoughts here, the continually moving time cap would be especially a huge turnoff for me. I totally understand, Matt, like being drawn to pre-EDH, and if things did segment off in those ways, and there is this section to play in time-wise, that makes sense because at least then it is still a steady place to be. But like rotation in particular, that makes sense for competitive areas, but it doesn't make sense to me as a social game. Playing what I happen to already have is the thing that I want to do, and I do think that changing stuff like that would kind of kill it. I think that Brawl's success in paper should alone kind of tell us what might happen if a rule like that were to change wholesale.
Yeah.
And by that, as a reminder for folks who are not familiar, a person won a Brawl event at Grand Prix Barcelona by default because they were the only person who entered that event. Like Brawl did not have a great takeoff. And I think that the rotation aspect of it did indeed play into that. It's not the type of area that I would personally want to spend my time. I enjoy that there's just this mountain of cards that I happen to already have, and I can fish through them to find cool stuff. And that it just feels so important.
Well, we know 100% now that Modern has not been and will never be again the format to play your old standard cards as it was originally kind of presented to the player base to be. Rest in peace, Modern. But at the same time, there is some sort of charm of just being able to get a pile together and be able to play it. Like I very much like that. So I don't know if I would like quit altogether, but the having the non-rotating card pool and just anything that's ever been printed you can play, that is unique. I mean, you can play Vintage, but even then, like Vintage will restrict you in other ways. So it's really, really interesting. I like the Eternal card pool though.
Yeah, feels foundational to me for sure. How important do you guys think it is that it is a 100 card format? Like the deck size, where does that play into things for you, do you think?
I think definitely the 100 card minimal size makes a difference. If they were to come out tomorrow and say, oh, we're raising the cap, you can have any number of cards, for example, so you can have a larger deck pool.
You're playing Battle of Wits. That's all you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't think that would impact very much. I don't think I would change what I'm doing, but I don't think that would impact anything really for the most part. Or if they like increased it to like say, okay, every deck has to be 110 or 120 or something, that does change a few things. But I definitely think having at least 100 is foundationally very, very important. Maybe we could go the other direction a little bit, but I wouldn't want to see less than 100 cards.
Yeah, at least 100 cards is a good way to put it. This one doesn't feel as foundational to me. Like this one is like, it's a post that's holding up like the awning out over the backyard where your dad used to barbecue on the 4th of July. It's that type of support for the format in my mind. And like this one seems, if they did change it, I don't know if it would do very much harm, honestly. I kind of agree with you, Dana. Like, it wouldn't affect me. I know there's a few people out there that really just want to play Battle of Wits, and I don't know why, or Yorion decks, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like, that's such a small like group of benefactors that I don't know if that's really worth making a change though either.
I'll tell you what, the card body of research certainly gets funny. Making a creature that's as big as the number of cards in your library, sure, pretty wild. I definitely think if libraries get any bigger, then searching your library for a specific card and shuffling things gets way more annoying than it already can be. Do you think Yorion would end up being under scrutiny for like Lutri-ish kind of reasons, or what do you think?
I don't think you need to ban it because like I think people are still going to min-max a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. It's so interesting. The 100 card limit, to me, it feels like it is working in tandem with several other rules to all like lean on each other to then support each other. Or if you ever did that thing like at recess in grade school or whatever, where everyone holds each other's hands in a circle and we all lean back together. And because you're all supporting each other's weight that way, I feel like the 100 card thing does sort of feel like that in tandem with like the doubled life total as well and the increased number of players as well. Those things all kind of maximize it to make it just like comically larger than life, to make it feel like ARAM in some ways for those who play League. It sort of feels like it's doing that. If it did go, more than 100 cards, I actually do think that would be kind of neat. If someone rocks up to a game with more cards in their deck than usual, I can see how that is funny and it enhances a game experience. I think I'm all game for that in a way that I'm not game for, here's my Narset Parter of Veils commander deck,
Right.
Like it's sort of that type of deal. Like I can see this being played with would be kind of funny. However, we do have to address that the mill decks out there would be very angry were that to be a little bit more relaxed.
The dozens of mill decks that still exist in 2025. Dozens!
What? Mill is the 14th most popular strategy, not including the Kindred decks. Like on our EDHREC theme pages, it's above Enchantress decks even. Watch out, they're gonna come for you, Matt. But on this, I think it would end up sort of forcing a lot of mill decks to almost always be combo decks in some way, where they're doing the traumatized thing in order to get through the full amount. It sort of forces their hand in that way. It was just like, if I'm doing a dozen cards at a time, I can't possibly mill through a person who's playing 150 cards or 200 or whatever. So it does help them out to have a cap, because if it was a little bit larger, then they probably would have a harder time and therefore have to go a little bit more extreme in what their strategy is in order to make up for that type of shortfall, I suppose.
Well, you just mentioned this, Joey, talking about this, which is life totals. Mm-hmm. And we've legitimately heard in the past discussion of like maybe perhaps lowering the commander life total down to like 30 or something. Either of you two have thoughts on that particular change? Because like 40 has been, I would say at this point, a pretty solid pillar of the format, but there's been discussion of people moving that down. What do you think about that, Matt?
I have no strong feelings one way or another. I don't think it should change. I don't think any of these rules should change, actually, like once you get into it. You got to draw a line somewhere, and every change afterwards feels so entirely arbitrary that like you're going to get criticized either way. And like the only thing that I think has any sort of credible like argument really when it comes to should we change this is the infect life totals. And I don't want that to change because I don't mind it, because also you never get exactly 10 infect unless you're listening to my challenge stats this week. It's either like you're getting 20 or 30 infect counters in one turn, or you're getting like 1 and 2 at a time. So like I don't think the life total should change. If it did, it's really hard for me to like, you're incentivizing either the aggro decks or you're incentivizing the control decks by raising it. It's like, who are you going to take a side with? And I don't think that's worth taking a side in.
Yeah, people have made arguments of like, oh, could the life totals stand to change? I, again, like the larger than life aspect of it. The decks are nearly twice as big as they are in other formats. The life total being twice as big is also, there's charm to that in the way that it's also like we have twice as many players too. Like I enjoy the almost symmetry, I guess, that kind of is illustrated with the numbers like that being extended to that amount. So it being a little bit lower, I don't know. It Matt, as you said, it does feel a little bit arbitrary. I also would not want the infect rule to change as long as we're talking about, life total stuff. Like there are some things that have changed and some things that have not. I do not think infect suffers or is super advantaged by where it's currently at.
No.
There's a lot of hay that gets made out of infect that I think is a little bit like, I don't know. Dana, you and I track our games, and I've tracked how many games have been won by things like just regular damage or combat damage or what have you. In the data that I've been tracking, very few games are won by infect, man. Like very, very few games are won that way. So I think it's more of a boogeyman than it is like an actual practical problem with regards to that. So that's my take. I like where things are at life total wise, and just different thresholds of winning the game wise. Those end goals still feel very natural to me.
So I think if you'd have asked me this question, 5-ish years ago, I probably wouldn't have been on board, but I also would have been like, changing to 30 life. I don't know if it changes that much stuff, really. Today, given how much faster the format has gotten, I think it would be a legitimate problem. I think the format is already faster than I necessarily like at even in bracket 3. And making it even faster, I don't think it's good for anybody. I don't think we need to make it easier to end games on turn 5 in a bracket 3 deck because life totals are that much lower.
Well, and that's a really good point that you bring up. Like at bracket 3, like games are ending pretty quickly. If you want to get into the brackets 2 and even like the exhibition, the bracket 1, where like you're just trying to experiment and showcase an idea, making games that much faster gives people less time to do the thing that they want to do and express themselves. And so I really don't like that, especially like when you have to consider, there's people with vastly different goals than just trying to win.
And I will point this out. We discussed this after the last bracket update when they were talking about how, bracket 3, you don't want to like be winning before turn 6 or so. And we had that conversation. We talked about like, that seems a little early. And like, are people going to interpret this as meaning they should win in bracket 6? And that's what I've seen. I've seen a lot of discussions, whether it's in Discords or on Reddit, where people being like, this is my bracket 3 deck and I can't win on turn 6. What can I do to change it? I'm like, So I think they have effectively, by putting that number out there, it has created that in the minds of the player base that like bracket 3 decks should be winning on turn 6, and if they're not, that's a problem.
Oh no, that's a bummer to hear.
Yeah, I don't like that seed getting planted, because that's incentivizing players to do something like is counterintuitive than what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely, like, given that kind of mindset, and that seems to be the player base mindset, I moving to 30 life seems like just a really bad idea.
Yeah, and Matt, as you pointed out, and extending it a whole lot would also kind of favor a different type of deck too. Like if you make it smaller, you favor the aggro. If you make it larger, then you favor control over time. And yeah, there is not a way to make a change that doesn't end up doing a bias, as you pointed out, Matt. So I don't know that this is necessarily like the most foundational thing in the entire format or whatever.
No.
It could be played with and things would still be fine. But if I absolutely must make a rules change for sure, like my life is on the line, I got to make a change. This is not the one that I'm making for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Moving on then, we discussed some of the supersized nature of the format, 100 cards, higher life total. A really big thing though, isn't just that you got a person in the zone. You got a person in the zone who is going to be a little bit mad at you if you let them have to go back to the zone. If they die in some way or they get exiled, they'll go back to the command zone, and you got to pay a little bit more. Stuff like command tax is important here. It does cost extra mana for you to repeatedly have to play your commander. And there is also the fact that your commander does go back to the command zone in the first place. How integral do those ingredients feel to you in the stew of EDH, do you think?
I think it's this is a similar, I'll make a similar comment to the one I made about life totals. I think as WotC has printed and designed more and more cards for Commander, they've done so making them more aggressively costed to make them more attractive. And we have this situation now where there's really, really strong 2 and 3 drop commanders that, costing 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 on the next couple times you cast them maybe isn't that big of a deal for how powerful they are. So I definitely think like the command tax today, given how aggressively costed some really strong stuff is, feels even less brutal than maybe it was 5 years ago.
Well, there's a way to narrate how powerful it is skirting command tax. You look at Derevi, which is still a very powerful commander, as a way to skirt around the command tax and having that be fundamental. I think command tax does 2 really, really important things. One, it prevents the really overpowered commanders, like you said, Dana, from really being omnipresent in your games, being able to stave off that wave of like Sithis always coming back as 2 mana is a problem.
Gross. That'd be so gross.
Get out of here. But also it allows some design space for Wizards team to kind of play in there. There's a lot of cards that keep popping up every now and then of you do a thing for this amount of mana that you spent to cast the spell.
Right.
And so that makes a really, really unique challenge to play around with in the command zone, because you are counting on that tax accruing over time. So I like it on 2 different levels, but the more important one that makes me feel very sure that command tax should not go anywhere is the fact that I don't want a 2 mana Sithis all the dang time throughout every single time I have to kill it.
Yeah.
You mentioned Derevi, Matt. I would put forth Eureka as well. Like the Commander Ninjutsu always being 2 mana. It's just this is so ridiculous.
It's so brutal. It's so brutal.
And there's a flavor to it. Just like your commander's a little bit mad that you let them go. It's just hey, you were supposed to protect me. What the heck? And so having a slight tax on that, having any punishment at all feels correct. And this 2 mana thing, it might feel like an arbitrary number, but it's almost like a 2-turn skip. It's just all right, you let me die. I'm not going to come out next turn, but if you're responsible enough, maybe I'm going to give you a moment, but I put you in timeout is sort of the way it feels like.
What even is your interior monologue, Joey? Because what are you having conversations with your commanders like that?
We cannot possibly subject everyone to my interior monologue.
Let's not do that. Yeah,
we can't possibly do that to people. On this though, it isn't just that there is command tax. There is also the fact that your commander does always go back to the command zone. This is actually a rules area that we've seen some flexibility with in the past before, when they changed the tuck rule years and years ago. For instance, there used to be a way to make a commander go into the deck and be really, really hard to ever get back out without access to things like tutors. They changed that. They were if your commander goes away in basically any version, we're going to let it go back to the command zone. I'm kind of curious if you guys think that is an area that could have, if that area was played with. Not saying that it will be. I really don't think that will be. But let's say that commander was more of a one and done type of thing. You play your commander once. If it's gone, then it's gone forever. How does that feel? That type of change. What is the impact there, would you say?
Yeah, I think that gets really hard in that it eliminates a lot of decks built around the commander, whether it's Voltron commanders or some kind of specific combo with the commander, or the commander is like a Nekuzar's thing where like that's responsible for what the main plan of the deck is doing, wheeling into dealing damage, whatever. I think it just eliminates so many commanders and so many strategies that I don't know how you would do it without just fundamentally changing so many decks.
Yeah, the tuck rule I didn't like a ton when it happened, because back then there were a lot of problem commanders that, like, if they stuck around, you just were out of luck. Stuff like Prosh was a big problem back when they made the tuck rule. Perforos was the scourge of many play groups. So that change, I didn't like it because like those were bigger problems, but now just every commander's a problem. So the tuck rule doesn't matter as much. Like
it's funny that you mentioned that every commander being a problem, Matt, because I noticed actually something this week. I was playing I had my Glyphs of the Trader deck out, and 3 consecutive removal spells got cast, like Swords to Plowshares, a Pondify, and something else. And none of them were aimed at Glissa. They were all aimed at other people's commanders. And I remember thinking to myself, like 7 years ago, somebody would have removed Glissa. Like Glissa would have been a problem and someone would have gotten rid of her. And the threat level of other commanders has risen so much that like, and then I was thinking like, when is the last time I played a command tax on Glissa? Like it's on a board wipe, I'm sure I have, but I'm like, I legitimately can't think of the last time someone target removed Glissa because there's just always today compared to 7 years ago, so many scarier things to have to get rid of.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was one thing that it's kind of wild to see just how far along the format has come. But yeah, being able to put your commander back into the command zone and then having to face the text again, it was something that needed to be happening. Yeah.
It does potentially incentivize commander-centric deck building on our parts, but it is better than the alternative of, all right, cool, I guess it's lost forever, and then you lose access to Dana, as you mentioned, Voltron decks and things like that. I just wanted to propose it as a hypothetical, because in observing, like, oh, what would happen, it reinforces the value of it being there. So, yeah, not the kind of thing that would ever change and never should.
Yeah, definitely not. So one thing that I know, this gets brought up a lot, and especially anytime somebody talks to Ben Brode about Commander and their thoughts on it. Commander damage.
Where you're going.
Commander damage gets brought up every now and then. Not quite as often so much, but do you guys think that Commander damage is something like we need to keep, or could it go away?
So I understand some of the arguments against it, because like there's a lot of situations where someone hits you for 6 Commander damage or something, and you're like, is this going to be relevant? And they're like, well, maybe not. It's not my plan, but like accidentally, if I hit you 3 more times, you're out. So like we should keep track of it. It creates weird situations where you're doing bookkeeping sometimes that winds up not being relevant, but you can't not do it. And there's not a lot of great ways to track that unless you have a life tracker app. Like if you're using Dice or some other life counter mechanism, it's kind of inelegant. However, at least me personally, I have a ton of decks that rely on commander damage. Like it would make a big deal for me, because I have probably 6 or 8 decks where like that's my win condition, is killing someone with my commander. So at least for me, it would be a huge change.
Yeah, I like command damage just as a way to have like that pressure release valve. Like there's something like you have those life gain decks, you have all those things. Yes, it doesn't happen every time, but like just because combos don't happen every single game doesn't mean they shouldn't exist. So that's the thing. Like people make the argument like, well, it doesn't affect that many games. Like it doesn't need to. Like you're making something justify its own existence after the fact. So that to me that feels very backwards.
Yeah, the existence of commander damage facilitates things like Voltron strategies, and taking that tool away does make those strategies just a little bit harder to really justify. And even if people aren't gaining infinite life, I mean, life gain decks do go up to like 100 pretty commonly. And so having, as you said, pressure release valve, I love that, because it feels to me like it echoes the mill equation.
Yeah, 100%. The mill is a good analogy there too, yeah.
Yeah, like, okay, if my deck is empty and I try to draw a card, I'm going to lose. It probably is not relevant for a lot of games. Again, we track our data. I have not seen a lot of, I think like maybe one in like 3 years have I seen a game that was officially won by mill. It doesn't come up very often. And it is a little bit annoying to like track, to ask like, okay, how many cards are left in your deck? That is also kind of an annoying little numbers bookkeeping type of thing. But I like that mill decks get to exist as a result of the rule that has that pressure release valve. And that's the same way that I feel here. I think that the format could exist without it, but I like that it's there, and I like what it allows to exist for sure.
Yeah, and I bet we've all been in those games too, where like someone's life total gets out of control because they're playing some deck, whatever it is, a food deck or a life gain deck of some sort, and they're at like 96 life, and everyone's like, how are we going to deal with this? And even if your deck isn't a Voltron deck, you're looking down, and you're like, well, my commander's got 6 power, and there's a Duelist Heritage in my hand. And I know I can, and you're like, I'm not worried. I can deal with this. Like I have a Rogue's Passage here, and I can punch through, even though that's not my win condition of this deck. I can take care of this problem if I need to take care of this problem. And without that, I think life gain becomes much more difficult to just incidentally deal with sometimes too.
Yeah, it might take you 11 turns, but your Iroh T-Master deck, it's going to get there eventually. It just might take a long time. But like giving everybody like that outlets to like, okay, it could happen. I just got to make sure I play my cards right. Yeah, I don't know. I really just don't like the argument that like just because it doesn't happen very often means it should go away.
Yeah, there are enough players for whom it is a really exciting place. And I love the dynamics you just described, because sometimes it does even create teamwork amongst the things. All eyes turn to the person whose commander has 5 or 6 power, and then they start being like, oh, I've got this thing that could give double strike. Oh yeah, I've got that Rogue's Passage or whatever. Like, that's a funny dynamic to exist. I think that this could be removed in theory, but it doesn't make any sense to necessarily do so because of the charm that it allows to exist for the games where it is relevant. That is, to me, a lot stronger than slight nuisances of bookkeeping for things that if people already know that's not going to matter, then they don't track it. That's perfectly fine. But for the folks that it is important to, it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess that kind of moves us to one of our last things here. And I don't think we can call this necessarily like a super foundational pillar of the format, but it is certainly an interesting wall in this house that is the Commander Mansion. There are no wish boards. There are no sideboards. There is no pull a card from outside the game and use it in here. How do we feel about this rule when it comes to Commander? Like, Matt, you play a lot of Eldrazi stuff. I know that there's a sponsor of Ulamog that could yoink a bunch of Eldrazi from outside of the game.
Theoretically, yeah.
Like, if the rule changed and you could use it, would you feel better? Like, do you not like it? Like, where are you at with it?
I still don't like it, actually. So, the wish boards and all that, like the sideboard action, in my mind, it helps fight off the variance. Like, if you gave everybody a sideboard, to me, that's a way to skirt around the Singleton 100 card randomness nature of Commander. So giving everybody a sideboard, like you have your Karn Great Creator that's going to pull all those cards out of your sideboard. Like, that's just a way to get around the randomness in a way that even like tutors can't always do. And so I really don't like it. It goes against so much of the spirit of what's going on. Now, like, I understand the arguments for it. Like, I think that lessons and being able to learn and pulling cards for like that. So if they did bring sideboards around in some form or fashion, it would have to be pretty specific to make sure like it just doesn't become like really boring slop.
Yeah, I feel like about this, like I do about hybrid mana a little bit, where I feel like it's almost exclusively going to be used to do things that I don't think make games better.
Yeah.
People will, yes, is someone occasionally going to be going to their sideboard with, whatever wish card they have to get something fun? Sure. Most of the time they're going to be going to get like some specific color or archetype hoser that they wouldn't otherwise put in their main deck because it's not consistent enough. But when there's no downside to having it over in that sideboard, you can go grab it and like just lock someone up. I think that's how you would see those kind of things used. And I don't think that makes the game better.
Yeah, there's a lot of risk, but it's risk that you have to trust in other people that they're not going to abuse it.
Yeah.
But like, that's also, to be fair, part of Commander in general. Like, you're trusting people to act in good faith and not try to lock you out of games on turn 3 or whatever. Like, but like, I really struggle also to think like, if I want to make a Jiminy Cricket deck and I want to wish upon a star and put a wish card in there, you should be able to, like, in theory. Like, so like, I understand the support that sideboard, evangelists actually have for their argument.
I personally find outside the game cards super charming. I would love to see more accessibility for it because it feels like one of those pinnacle, quintessential, super casual type of things to do in a game. Like, oh, it's just cards I have around my house. Like, there's something fun and accessible to that I like. But I know that there's no way to make a change like this without accidentally encouraging or incentivizing players to use sideboards just all over the place. It then becomes technically correct to always have a sideboard in case you tally pulling cards off of everyone's deck into someone else's wish card, for instance. Like,
yeah.
And so like, you're incentivizing those ways. And I love the linearity points that you guys brought up as well. That is also technically true of a lot of those cards, encouraging like, oh, cool, I'll grab this color hoser that wasn't consistent from it. Like, I love that example, Dana. So yes, this is best left as a rule 0 thing. asking permission to the table rather than making an official change. Even though I like it in theory, it can only stay a theory in my head. But there is something that I'm just like,
I do think
all of it.
It gives people a lot of creativity to kind of play around with their decks. The downside of that, and this is something we haven't really talked about in a lot of these arguments about changing the rules, I think that the sideboard impact for the CEDH circles would be also hugely damaging. That would really impact
for sure,
the way that CEDH players build their decks, because that gives them a lot of freedom where, we like to embrace the Singleton nature, the randomness, how every game is going to be different. Well, they're trying to reduce all of that variance. And so CEDH players are kind of incentivized to optimize and build with that sideboard in mind. So that kind of overturns everything in a way that I think even banning Dockside didn't even get to.
Yeah, for sure. We've mentioned 10 things so far, but as a quick final cap, I wanted to ask, and Matt, this is actually a question I got to ask you right before the show, but I want to bring it out here while we're all on microphone and stuff like that. Not even just the rules that we've already talked about, but this final question, if you had to change a rule, you absolutely must. Something must be changed in some way, big or small. What is it that you feel you would pick? Matt, I had asked you before the show began if you wanted to speak on that now. But please feel free to do so, share with the class. But I feel like it's a cool hypothetical to exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's look at all these walls and what would we do?
I mean, Dana honestly did kind of put a little bit of a seed that's grown over the course of this episode. If I had to say decks have to be at least 100 cards, but you can go above that, I think that has probably the least amount of damage and is going to upset the balance that we currently have. Because ultimately, I don't think we should change any of these rules, because Commander's in a fantastic place still. And there are tweaks that we keep making around the bracket system and everything, but none of these foundational rules have changed. So I don't think that saying instead of it has to be exactly 100 cards, it has to be at least 100 cards. I don't think that really hurts a whole lot, honestly, other than the 7 mil players out there still. I was thinking before, maybe sideboards wouldn't be so bad, because it does give people a little bit of creativity to play around with. But really, there's so much downside to that. I think that opens up a lot of doors for just reducing and skirting the spirit of the format. I do, Dana, you have convinced me. Going to at least 100 cards instead of exactly 100 cards, I would not hate, honestly.
Okay. I think that's a strong entry. Dana, is that how you also would feel, do you think? Or is there a different one that would be on your mind instead? What do you think?
So there's that one, yes. Although it also would probably wind up manifesting itself in the form of, that last card I can't cut from a deck. Me being like, to hell with it. I guess this is a 101 card deck now.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not necessarily great, but that's what would happen. The other one, actually, and we didn't mention this, we talked about lowering the starting life pools. I would genuinely be curious to see what it would be like to play at a 50 life total. Okay. And go in the other direction. I think... I haven't thought about that a ton. So if listeners right now are screaming, "You idiot!"
maybe
you might be.
They've
correct.
been saying it all episode, Dan.
Absolutely, yeah. And maybe in a week of thinking about this, I'll realize it's a terrible idea. But 40 life right now is not what 40 life was 6-7 years ago in Commander.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I do wonder if making that a 45 or a 50. And maybe I should experiment with this on my own in games with friends and stuff to see what it's like. I don't think that is the same thing as it would have been changing it, years ago. I do think that might well be the kind of thing that would just add an extra turn to games without changing that much. It's going to mess with the aggro. It's going to mess with some other things for sure. But I do think that's something that I'm going to maybe tinker with a little bit just to see how it plays out.
I like that with both of those answers, there's something that we're leaning into here with we're still leaning into the larger than life aspect of this, to the silly battle royale of it all. Yeah. There is something supersized about the format. And so going beyond the current cap of cards and then the heightened life totals, there's something about going bigger is part of the leaning into the comedy, but also the social aspect of it that I really enjoy about both of those. So I totally understand where you're coming from. Mine is probably more controversial. It actually isn't something that we mentioned at all previously in the episode.
So you're adding rules.
This was to be a big restriction, a big change, and I understand everyone's going to hate it for a minute, but I would genuinely want to consider do we eliminate searching and shuffling?
Ooh,
one of my pet peeves of the game is that we all shuffle, we get a hand, and then the next 2 or 3 turns that we spend are like shuffling again. And just like, cool, I'll crack this fetch and I'll go find my triumph. Here's a farce, you can go shuffle again. And then here's this, I'll crack that and to go find it. It's like, it's a lot of shuffling, and shuffling to me is just always a loading screen. And having played a bunch of other games that have no shuffling at all, it's a really smooth experience, you guys. At the very least, I'm going to be trying out in my decks probably for the next year, removing all shuffling entirely from my own stuff, because it is really just driving me kind of crazy. So I'm going to take it as a personal challenge. But I think that there are interesting ways that the format changes if searching was completely eliminated. I would be curious to see what happens as a result of that, because I think it does make some gameplay glide a little bit better.
Riftbound has that going for them, and I'm really glad they've been intentional about not having any shuffling in their game. Every time that I watch Riftbound play videos, I want to play Riftbound more and more. Like it's really, really interesting to see, but that is probably one of the coolest things, because the gameplay is so much smoother than I'll do this thing and then I'll shuffle. Like if you watched like a Pro Tour when fetches were legal and standard, it was miserable. And so yeah, just from like a watching experience, just somebody participating, reducing shuffling makes a big impact. I like the suggestion, Joey.
Like, think of how much shuffling gets removed from gameplay videos that we watch. It's a lot. There's a reason.
It's a lot.
It's not fun to watch.
There's a reason we don't do it.
Yeah, and this isn't for me. It's not about power. It is just that this is a loading screen where no action is taking place and everyone is sitting around twiddling their thumbs a little bit. Like that's not physically enjoyable, and so it would be kind of interesting to see for me. Like, oh, if it changed, cool. What happens? I think that we get to games faster and more interestingly.
Yeah, as somebody who actually played Revised when it was, the thing, Demonic Tutor was the only shuffle, was the only like search and shuffle effect, really. I think at the time, I don't think there was anything else that did that. So it was a rarity when someone would like actually shuffle their deck and have to do something that searched and shuffled. It was an unusual thing that didn't occur. You might go 6, 7, 8 games without like experiencing that. So I've seen what Magic looked like, and like, we've gotten so accustomed to one person at least every turn is doing some kind of a search and shuffle, if not multiple people.
Between fetches, between ramp spells, between like, and that's not even tutors, like when you think about it. So yeah, there's a lot that's going on there that you can slow down a game really, really quickly. Like I would be curious actually how much faster games go. Like how many more games at a Magic Con do you get in because nobody's shuffling? Like that's such an interesting prospect.
Yeah, but play one game where there is no shuffling at all, and I promise, I really do think it's an interesting experience. There are decks of mine that had so much shuffling that I stopped playing them just subconsciously. And this obviously affects landfall decks a whole lot. Like a lot of people would probably think that landfall decks get ruined by this if they had no access to shuffling because of land ramp, but I really do think that green would be okay, and a lot of people think that green needs to be taken down a notch anyway. So like, I don't know. It would also, of course, deliver. Like, there's no way that it doesn't affect CEDH to have something like this. So that would be a whole other thing. That is not a perspective I'm really like able to take into account here. My point is just that like, oh, this is actually a thing that annoys me. So if there's anything that I'm looking at in terms of what could I make a change about, I don't like that I shuffle and then play a turn and immediately shuffle again, and then next turn I shuffle again. I'm just a little bit like, so.
I really like this. The spirit of wanting to do this. I absolutely love for so many reasons. The practicality of being able to, though, like that, because ramping is such an integral part of Commander, where like it's all about resource accumulation. So not even landfall decks, but just so many decks playing green and just decks in general. There's incidental shuffling and searching and stuff like that. Like it's really, really hard to pull up.
Assassin's Trophy, dude.
Exactly. Yeah, like it's such a core piece of what people are doing that like it's not feasible. Like really, when you think about it, like I wish it were, but I think it is like so ingrained in just how cards are designed that there's no chance in hell that Wizards is going to be like, let's just never print a ramp spell again.
But yeah, I agree with you. It's a great idea that just can't practically be done. But if it wasn't for the fact that it couldn't practically be done because it would like impact so many decks and just impact how they print cards. Yeah, I love the idea of not having to deal with searching and shuffling in a game. Absolutely.
I do appreciate that y'all went for like actually possible rules as well. Like big difference between us here. It's just like, oh yeah,
you're a dreamer, Joey. We appreciate that about you.
But like I like there is a practicality to it that does need to be acknowledged, and like life total does feel like one of those things like, oh, I see the flexibility here, and size of library, like, oh, I see flexibility here, but there are a bunch of other rules that it's just like, please don't touch this, because it's like you're kicking a load bearing wall, and we probably shouldn't do that. There are some changes, there are some ways that you can remove a couple of grains of sand from the beach and it's still the same beach, but take too big of a scoop out of that sand and it becomes a different beach. So there are some things that are not safe to play with, and that's been interesting to go over today. Matt, thank you so much for suggesting this subject, because it's really interesting to see what it is that is so foundational to make Commander feel like the special place that it is.
Yeah, this was fun to get to talk about, and just I see everybody talking about the hybrid mana conversation, and well, what else is sacred? What else makes Commander what it really is and what everybody loves about it? So I'm glad we got to talk about this.
Yeah, indeed. That, of course, begs the question, everyone out there, what rules do you think are flexible and which ones should never be changed? What are the things that make Commander Commander? You gotta let us know what all of your thoughts are about this, and indeed how crazy I am for suggesting a thing like shuffling at all being removed from the format. It's okay. I know that I'm a little bit crazy. You can tell me. It won't hurt my feelings at all, I promise. But yeah, this has been fantastic, you guys. Listeners, let us know all of your thoughts. And if our listeners want to get in touch with us on the onlines, fellas, where can they find us? Matt?
So you can find me on pretty much any social media platform at Mathimus55, whether you want to see like Instagram, where like you can see all like the cool pictures from my wedding, which is really, really cool. Those two guys were there even too. Joey and Dana got to join. So follow me on Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever it is, any social media. But also don't forget, we are super happy to work with Dragon Shield, who, I mean, if their sleeves are good enough to protect cards that go into space, they're good enough for, protecting from Dana spilling his cherry Coke on everything too. So check out Dragon Shield, use code EDHREC when you check out and get yourself a nice little discount while you're there.
And Dana, how about you?
You can find me online at Dana Roach. I'm writing articles for EDHREC. And if you are at all interested, I've been handling some social media stuff for the Architect Instagram and TikTok accounts. So you can see some short form videos from me as well as my cat on there. And you can find all of us together at patreon.com/EDHRECast.
And you can find me everywhere online, from Instagram to Blue Sky at Joseph M. Schultz. And you can, of course, find the cast online at EDHRECast. Listeners, we'll be back at you next week with more data and insights. But until next time, remember, EDHREC your deck before you wreck your deck.